The room smelled like syrup and wet wool when Pastor Ruth tapped the mic. Paper crowns bobbed on little heads. Someone's Packer hat shook with a chuckle. "Friends," she said, "this morning we announced the Linda McAllister Nursing Scholarship." A framed photo of my Linda blue cardigan, that half smile, rested on an easel beside the podium. The fellowship hall went quiet the way a lake goes glassy before sunset. Pastor Ruth squeezed my hand and stepped aside. A bank officer in a gray suit cleared his throat. "Funds go directly to schools and medical providers for 2 children, Maddie and Eli. No intermediaries." Chairs creaked, forks paused. I watched my daughter-in-law's smile falter in the steam lifting off the pancake griddle, and for the first time all winter, my hands felt warm. That wasn't where the story began, of course. That was where it landed. It began the way a lot of winters begin in northern Illinois: salt on the roads, a plastic runner by the front door, and me taking off my boots at my son's place because Kelsey doesn't like slush on the hardwood. Christmas night at Jason and Kelsey's split level in Loves Park was loud with kids and wrapping paper and the muted TV showing a halftime show nobody watched. The living room had that cinnamon candle smell Kelsey likes, and the radiator ticked like a lazy metronome. I set my Casey's coffee mug on a coaster that said, "Bless this mess," and nobody laughed because it was true. The tree leaned a little to the left from too many ornaments on one side, like a man carrying grief on one shoulder. Dad, Jason, came in from the kitchen, cheeks red from the oven heat, carrying a ham like it was a newborn. "You made it through the roads." "Slow and steady," I said. "Lincoln Avenue's a skating rink." "Take his coat," Maddie. Kelsey called bright as a game show host. She was wearing a sweater with sequin snowflakes and the kind of smile you use on strangers you want something from. Maddie slid my coat off careful as a nurse. Eli's socks were mismatched, one with hockey sticks, one plain gray, and he bounced in place until I ruffled his hair. "Grandpa, did you bring the bluegill recipe?" he asked. "The one Grandma wrote." "In my pocket," I said, patting my flannel shirt. "You and me will be frying fish again come June." We ate. The ham was fine. The potatoes were boxed, but nobody said so. Jason asked about my snowblower and whether the starter still stuck. Kelsey updated the room on the kitchen backsplash. She wanted subway tile white grout, and how when the time is right, they'd make the numbers work. We moved to the living room for presents. Kelsey ran the show, reading tags, tossing boxes, narrating like a morning anchor. For Eli, from Aunt Bree. For Maddie, from Mom and Dad. For Jason, from Mom, me. Tissue paper drifted to the carpet like slow-motion confetti. I handed over the small wrapped book I'd picked for Maddie. Where the red fern grows, not because of the dogs, but because of the way old stories settle in a young heart, and a science kit for Eli with a dozen ways to make a battery out of a lemon. They thanked me like kids who know how to say thank you and mean it. The pile under the tree shrank. The room's noise softened. I caught myself smoothing the crease of my jeans the way I used to before Linda would slide her hand on my knee and say, "It's okay, Walt. Let joy be messy." The last gift Kelsey picked up was a tidy little cube in shiny paper red ribbon tied into a bow you see on commercials. "Oh," she said, "one more, for Walter." She exaggerated my name so it sounded like a form you fill out. She walked it to me with that half grin she wears when she's about to win something nobody else is playing. "Here," she said, and set it on my knees. "So you don't forget." Forget what Eli said. He was rubbing a thumb against a Lego sticker, eyes flicking between us. Kelsey tilted her head as if delivering a punchline. "That you're worth nothing." It didn't come out of nowhere. Not really. It came from 100 small cuts, each duller than the last, a joke about old men and their stories, a bill slid across a table with a smile, a canceled Sunday dinner, because we're slammed this week. Still, the words landed with a thud only I could hear. Jason didn't meet my eyes. Maddie did, and hers were wet. I smiled because the thing about dignity is you either carry it or you spill it. And once you spill it, other people decide where it goes. I set the little cube on the coffee table. It felt too light, like a hollow fruit. "Thank you," I said. Kelsey blinked, thrown off her timing. "Open it," she said, recovering. "We want to see." I lifted the lid. Inside was cardboard and air. A laugh hiccuped out of one of Jason's cousins and died embarrassed in the throw pillow. Kelsey's grin sharpened. "Just a reminder," she said, sing-song, all in fun. "You shouldn't have," I said. The room waited for me to crack, to scold, to make their ugliness worth it. I took a breath and didn't give it to them. I reached behind the couch where I'd tucked my own small package, a plain manila envelope with a red ribbon folded twice around it. I set it beside the empty box, its shadow falling across the cheap glitter like a line drawn with a carpenter's pencil. "I brought something too," I said. "We'll save it for dessert." Jason shifted. "Dad," he said, warning threaded through the word. He had Linda's eyes, but not her patience. He was a boy once who needed braces and new skates and a ride to every rink in 3 counties, and I gave him those things because that's what fathers do. The man he became was standing there with a jaw I recognized from my own mirror, clenched hard enough to crack a walnut. "It's nothing dramatic," I said, "just paper." Kelsey rolled her eyes like a teenager. "Papers and more papers," she said. "We live in a country obsessed with forms." "You'll like these," I said. "They save everybody trouble." Maddie slid closer to me on the couch, her hand finding mine in the space between cushions. "Is it Grandma's recipe?" she whispered. "In a way," I said. "It's how we keep her ways." Kelsey clapped her hands. "Okay," she said, brightly pivoting like an aerobics instructor. "Game time. We do dessert and then Walter's papers." She winked at her sister. "Maybe it's a will. Maybe he finally signed the cabin." Jason flinched at that, a tiny twitch. "I filed it away the way you do when you've spent 4 decades in the wind and know how weather changes." Dessert was the same sheet cake we've cut every year since the kids were toddlers. White frosting, crooked candy canes piped in red, the corner where Noel always smears into Noe. Eli sang along with a carol on the TV in a key nobody wrote down. The radiator hissed again. The house felt too warm all at once. Kelsey cleared plates with theatrical efficiency, stacking them so high the top one slid, and she had to catch it with her elbow. "Okay, Walter," she said, sweeping back in and sitting across from me with her legs crossed at the ankle, like ladies do when they're about to tell you how the world works. "Let's see the big show." I untied the ribbon. The knot remembered my fingers like it had been waiting. I slid out the top sheet, the title bold as a street sign. McAllister Family Trust amended and restated. December 24th. I didn't read it. Not then. I just let the heading sit where everyone could see it, black ink on white paper, as plain and clean as new snow. "What is that?" Jason asked, but the question was breath, not voice. "Just paper," I said again and smiled at Maddie. "You made me a card this year." She nodded, eyes bright. I drew the cabin. "I can't wait to see," I said. We didn't fight. There would be plenty of that later with people who wore ties and didn't take sides. That night I kept my voice low and my heart steady and the envelope safe. I stood to go before the coffee got cold, thanked Kelsey for hosting, told Jason to check the starter on the snowblower because the cord was fraying. I hugged my grandkids long enough to memorize their shampoo. The storm door groaned when I opened it. The night bit my cheeks. Snow squeaked under my boots like it does when it's too cold for anything but truth. I slid behind the wheel of my old F-150 and sat for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, the heater coughing itself awake. My phone buzzed with an AARP email I didn't read. I looked at the man in the rear view, the one Linda used to call stubborn and good, and said, "Not bitter, Lynn, just better." Then I put the truck in drive and went home. September in northern Illinois makes a man honest. The air thins, the corn goes copper, and a quiet house tells on you. My little ranch in Machesney Park wakes the same way, furnace testing itself, refrigerator humming the kitchen clock, ticking where Linda's voice used to be. I pour Folgers into a chipped Casey's mug, look at her photo and say, "Morning, Lynn." I keep moving because that's what retired line workers do. Move, fix, carry, repeat. I sharpen mower blades, sort screws into coffee cans, grease the Briggs & Stratton that will pretend not to start when the first lake effect blows in. A text buzzes while I'm hunting the 13mm socket. Kelsey. "Hey Walter, can you Venmo the hockey fees? Discount ends today. No greeting, no please, just the tap-tap of a life run by calendar reminders and other people's money. I send it. I tell myself it's for Eli's skates, not their backsplash. Most Tuesdays, I pick up Maddie from band. I set a high-V rotisserie chicken on the passenger seat so no one has to cook. The bag warms the cab and makes the truck smell like Sundays from 20 years ago. Maddie tells me about a science fair and how you can light a bulb with a lemon. "Would Grandma like my poster?" she asks. "She'd frame it," I say. "She'd show strangers in the grocery line." "Small cuts blend if you let them. Jason cancels our Thursday dinner because the week's nuts. Kelsey leaves me a key and a note to wait for contractors /9 noon and thanks me later like I'm a dog who did a trick. I drive home with the radio off. In October, dry leaves stick to my back while I'm under the F-150 replacing a heat shield. Hank Bruckner, our church deacon, shows up with 2 glazed donuts and the kind of quiet you can lean on. "You look tired in the soul," he says. "Nothing dramatic," I tell him. "Just a lot of needing without much thank you." "You don't have to get loud to be clear," he says. "What does clear look like?" "Paper," he says. "Boundaries you can hold in your hand." The first snow comes sideways. I'm at Jason's fixing a sticky latch when his phone rings on the counter, Kelsey, flashing across it. He taps speaker and keeps sanding. "Hey," he says. Her voice floods the kitchen. "So the designer says if we go quartz now, we should do the Island 2 package pricing. And if we unload the Wisconsin cabin next spring, just saying we could do this, right, Jason?" He glances at me guilty the way boys get when they're caught, but haven't decided if they're sorry. "We're not talking about the cabin," he says, too soft. Kelsey laughs. "I mean, when he's gone, we're obviously not keeping a drafty shack 2 hours away. You know this. We need a real kitchen." I stop working my hand on the latch. The word "gone" hangs longer than it should. Jason swipes the phone off speaker so fast he fumbles it. The call ends with a chirp. We stand in plaster dust. She says things he mutters. You know how she gets. I fold the rag that used to be one of Linda's dish towels. Not like that, I say, but the heat drains out of my voice as if someone opened a door. That night I microwave meatloaf and don't taste it. The house creaks the way old houses do when they're deciding whether to hold you or let you rattle. I sit across from Linda's picture and repeat her words, "Don't let them make you small." There's a line between hurt and humiliation, and I can feel my toes curling over it. I start 3 letters on yellow legal paper. Dear Jason. Son. I love you, but, Kelsey, this isn't a game and tear them into confetti. I am not a man for speeches. I'm a man for poles and wire and getting the juice back on after a storm. I need something that holds when weather turns. Sunday after service, I ask Pastor Ruth if she's got a minute. We stand near the felt board where the Sunday school kids pin paper sheep. "Pastor," I say, "if a person wanted to do some good in someone's name but also keep peace in his own house, what would you call that?" "Stewardship," she says, "and prudence." I tell her I'm thinking about a small scholarship in Linda's name for a nursing student. Linda was a CNA who could change a dressing and a life with the same touch. "We can make that happen," she says. "As modest or as steady as you want." I call Hank from the parking lot. "You were right about paper," I tell him. "Paper doesn't shout," he says. "It just sits there and makes sense." Monday morning, I look up a name I haven't said since she was a kid on our block, Dana Corbett. She's an attorney downtown. I dial, and her assistant puts me on for Thursday. When I hang up, my hands shake the way they used to at the top of a pole in a storm, part fear, part relief at finally tying in. On Wednesday evening, I polish the cabin key. It hangs on an old Lund boat's keychain, aluminum scarred but solid. I rub it with Brasso and think about Summer's bluegill popping in the pan, Linda's cornbread Eli whooping that the bobber's down, Maddie pretending she isn't afraid to touch the bait. The cabin has thin walls and a stubborn screen door and a view that forgives 1,000 things. It is not for sale. It is for Summers. Before bed, I set the key on the dresser beside my wallet and Linda's locket. I open the locket and press my thumb to the tiny picture, borrowing courage from yesterday. Not bitter, I tell her, just better and clear. When I finally sleep, I dream of wire, strung tight between poles, no sag, no hum, a clean line the wind can't bully. By morning, frost has traced a little map on the window. I follow it home to church, to bank to lawyer, to a living room I know too well. The route looks simple, which isn't the same as easy. I put on my flannel, I lace my boots, I fill the Casey's mug, then I pick up the phone and keep the appointment. Dana Corbett's office sits on the 3rd floor of a sandstone building, downtown radiators, hissing stairwell smelling of old paper and winter coats. Her door says, "Corbett and Hale" in thin gold. I brush road salt from my boots and step in with my hat in my hands, like a man who knows he needs help and plans to take it. "Walt McAllister," she says, rising from a desk of neat stacks. She glances at the photo of Linda the assistant printed. "Let's do right by her." We talk in simple English because I asked. "You want the house safe, The Wisconsin cabin kept for the grandkids. Savings moved into a trust, she says, checking boxes. You want to protect Maddie and Eli from adult mistakes and keep peace without pretending everything's fine. That's the picture, I say. No fight, structure. We create the McAllister Family Trust, she says. You serve as trustee. When you can't, Pine River Bank Corporate Trust steps in. We retitle the house and cabin to the trust. Savings and CDs transfer. Your Vanguard IRA points by beneficiary form. The F-150 gets transfer on death paperwork. Who gets what? Primary beneficiaries are the grandkids in equal shares held in a spendthrift trust. Creditors and bad decisions can't grab it. The bank pays for tuition braces. Medical bills, maybe a first car if it's reasonable. We keep it boring and kind. Boring and kind is my favorite. She slides a page with bold headings. We include a no contest clause. If anyone challenges and loses their share, reduces or is removed. I think of Kelsey on speaker talking quartz counters and my being gone. Good, I say. I don't want to stage. We'll also redo your powers of attorney, she says, financial and medical. Name me and your friend Hank, not because Jason is bad, but because neutrality matters. Hank will show up in a blizzard, I say. You will too. We list assets, house paid off, cabin deed with rusted staples, around $480 in CDs and a checking balance that runs high. A modest IRA. Dana dials Pine River Bank and asks for trust. A voice says, "This is Martin, like he's been there forever." By lunch, we have a skeleton trust document schedules of property letter of wishes. Not binding, Dana says, tapping the letter, but trustees read these like gospel if you're clear. She gives me a pen. What do you want to say? I print like I did on storm tags. I say the cabin is for summers with my grandchildren and must not be sold while a grandchild wants to use it. I say bluegill and cornbread because concrete words matter. I say school and health payments go straight to the school or provider. I ask for small things that feel big, fix the porch swing, keep Linda's photo on the mantle, phones in a bowl during supper. Lovely, Dana says. We sign where flags stick out. Every signature scrapes something loose in me grit I've carried since the day entitlement walked into my kitchen on speakerphone. At the Winnebago County Recorder's Office, it's beige on beige pens on chains, a clerk in a cardigan that could tell 1,000 stories. We hand over deeds. The clerk stamps each sheet with a sound like a gavel. Thunk, thunk. Ownership doesn't change how the screen door bangs, but paper gives me a way to keep promises when the world gets clever. At Pine River Bank and Trust, the lobby is more fern than people. Martin meets us in a conference room with a table that makes you sit straighter. He sets out the banker's pen with a weighted base. We like rules, he says after skimming. Yours are clean. Distributions for education and medical needs, direct pay. First car, reasonable, safe at trustee discretion. No cash to parents. Good, I say. I want the kids to feel provided for, not bought. We also honor letters of wishes as far as prudent. The cabin clause is unusual, but fine. We won't sell unless conditions change drastically. Taxes and insurance can run from trust cash. What about fights, I ask? He taps the no contest clause. People think twice when they realize they could lose more by making noise. Donna closes the folder. We'll fund the trust this week. By Christmas, everything will be titled. Can I get a summary I can hold, I ask. Bold print, plain English. Of course, Martin says. We'll notarize it. In the hall, Dana says Pastor Ruth called. Scholarship paperwork is simple. Announce it at the New Year's pancake breakfast if you like. It matters that old men in Packers hats clap when a CNA's name is said out loud. It matters that kids run between folding tables and get sticky and someone tells them to slow down without making them small. It matters that my grandkids hear applause that isn't for me, but for the woman who taught me to be gentle without being weak. We finish at dusk. The sky over the river is the gray of steel cable. Dana's assistant ties a red ribbon around a manila envelope and slides it to me. Do not open on the highway, she says, grinning. On top is the trust summary in type you can read without glasses. Thank you, I tell Dana at the elevator. Walt, she says, I've seen people try to settle scores with paper. That's not what you're doing. No, I say, I'm settling my heart. Outside, the wind lifts and lays down like a dog testing where to sleep. I tuck the envelope inside my coat. The ribbon presses my ribs. It feels like a seatbelt. On the way home, I stop for hand warmers and a ham I'll pretend tastes like Linda's. At a red light, I pat the envelope the way a man checks for keys. Back at the house, I lay the packet beside Linda's locket on the dresser. The cabin key gleams in lamplight. I pour 2 fingers of cheap bourbon into a jelly jar and stand by the window while frost stitches its lace. Paper boundary kindness, I say, counting off like a prayer. The radiator knocks a soft rhythm. For the first time in a long time, the line feels tight and the poles sound. On December 20th, the wind came out of the northwest and rattled the aluminum storm door like loose change. I made a list at the kitchen table with a ballpoint that left a ridge where I pressed too hard. Tape ribbon gift tags, a winter coat for Jason, a book for Maddie, a science kit for Eli, something that smells like cedar for Kelsey, and 1 envelope's worth of courage for me. The furnace coughed, the clock ticked. I finished my Folgers, tucked Linda's locket under my flannel, and headed for Ace. Ace knows my name. The bell chirped when I pushed the door, and that dry, friendly air hit me the smell of fertilizer bags and oiled hinges, paint mixer wine somewhere near aisle 5. Harold at the counter said, "Afternoon Walt," like we'd never missed a week. I loaded a red basket with scotch tape and a decent pair of shears because the kitchen drawer pair bends at the tip. I grabbed a cedar-scented candle that actually smelled like wood, not a parade float, and a small tackle box-sized toolkit I knew Eli would open and reorganize 3 times before breakfast. On the way out, Harold raised 2 fingers. Cold snap coming. I raised 2 back, got the cords and the salt. Target was bright enough to make a man blink. I stood too long in the card aisle reading messages until the words went soft. To the grandpa who taught me true north when sad. I put it back 2 on the nose and picked a simple blank with a snow-covered dock. For Maddie, I found a copy of Where the Red Fern Grows, with a cover that looked like it remembered cold hands. The science kit had a lemon on the front and promised safe experiments, which is not the same as dull. In men's coats, I ran my hand down racks until a heavy canvas parka with a quilted lining told me Jason wouldn't freeze clearing the drive. I folded the receipt under the collar with a note that said, "Keep the receipt, son, no shame in a better fit." Back home, I set the bags on Linda's old wrapping table, which is really just a hollow core door over 2 sawhorses with a red plastic caddy for tape and tags. The house sounded like it always does in December, radiator ticking fridge, humming the faint fizz in the vents the moment the furnace lights. I rolled out paper with small pine cones printed in tidy rows, the shears bit clean. Tape snapped off with a sound that was more memory than noise. I wrapped the book square and true because that's how Maddie's mind works. I wrapped the science kit messy because that's how Eli tears into things. The coat took almost a whole roll, but I wanted the weight of it to feel like a promise when Jason hefted the box. The cedar candle gave the room a quiet smell that didn't lie. I set it aside for Kelsey and printed the tag in block letters for winter evenings. No jab, no sermon. Paper doesn't preach, it remembers. Then I pulled out the manila envelope and set it where the light could find the raised notary seal. The red ribbon from Dana's assistant lay coiled like a patient thing. I slid it around the envelope and practiced tying it without shaking. My fingers remembered poles and wire and knots you tie wearing gloves. I tucked the tail just so. If you're going to let paper do the talking, it helps if it looks ready to speak. Hank met me at Denny's the next morning. Coffee arrived before we asked, because Dot has poured coffee so long she can smell a man's need when he hits the vestibule. Eggs over easy rye toast, sausage links that snapped. We sat in a corner booth under a photograph of a smiling softball team from 1994. "Run the drill," Hank said. He squared his shoulders and pitched his voice high and sugary. "Walter, open your little papers, we're dying of suspense." I took a sip and set the cup down so the ceramic kissed the saucer. "Just paper," I said. "We'll save it for dessert." He tried again, nastier. "We're doing you a favor, you old barnacle. Sign the cabin." I breathed in, counted 3, felt the edge of the envelope under my jacket like a seatbelt. Primary beneficiaries Maddie and Eli via bank-managed trust. I recited slow and plain. Any challenge triggers removal and reduction. Hank's eyes crinkled again. We did it until my voice sanded down to a steady grain. Dot topped us off and said, "Whatever it is, make it kind." Hank told her it was because in the best stories the facts are the sharp parts and the delivery is soft. At First Lutheran that afternoon, the fellowship hall smelled like mop water and cardboard, which is what hope smells like after a long year. Pastor Ruth leaned against a stack of folding tables and read my draft for the scholarship announcement. "Short is good," she said. People listened to Short. We penciled in the line, "I couldn't let go of care you can feel in your hand," because Linda believed in blankets, not slogans. Pastor tapped the calendar taped to the fridge. "Pancakes, Jan 1. We'll go after the raffle," she said. "Folks are full and still happy then." I walked the perimeter's coat rack, where little boots would pile the sound of the old Coke machine, rattling once an hour, bulletin board with photos from the Mitten Drive, and a Polaroid of Linda pouring coffee at last year's chili supper. I pictured the scholarship frame with her photo on a thin metal stand beside the podium. Not a shrine, just a pointer. Pastor Ruth squeezed my elbow. "She'd like this," she said. I said I hoped so, and felt the truth of it in my ribs. On the way out, I sat a minute in the sanctuary where winter light comes thin through stained glass and puts colors on the backs of pews no one leans far enough to see. I thanked God for paper and old friends and banks that like rules. I asked for a quiet mouth and a steady back. That night I loaded the wrapped gifts into the F-150 cab because I didn't want to wrestle boxes in the morning. The truck smelled like pine and tape and a cedar that wasn't from the woods. I slid the envelope into the inside pocket of my wool coat left side, where a man keeps things he can't afford to drop. The cabin key I set on the dresser ready to slip into my palm at the right time, like a magic trick that isn't about fooling anyone, only revealing what was always there. Before bed I phoned Jason. "Need anything for tomorrow?" I asked. "We're good," he said. His voice had the worn spot a man gets when he's standing between what he wants and what he's willing to do to get it. "Check the snowblower cord," I said. "It's fraying." "Yeah," he said. "I'll look." I hung up and stood at the sink where Linda used to hum. The window showed my own face, and beyond it the kind of night that makes sound carry. I practiced the only other line I meant to say, if pushed. "This is for summers, not sales." The words felt right in my mouth. They tasted like lake air. When I finally turned out the lamp, the house exhaled. In the dark, the envelope in my coat felt as present as a heartbeat. I slept light and woke at 5 to the sound of plows and a sky the color of pewter. Somewhere a train horn laid a flat note over town. I made coffee, buttoned my flannel, and told Linda's picture the plan one more time. No fights, I said, no speeches, just paper keys, pancakes, and June. The locket was cool against my skin. I tucked my collar, pulled on my boots, and went to meet the weather and whatever words were waiting. Dessert plates made that particular plastic scrape on the coffee table when Kelsey stacked them, frosting smears glowing under the tree lights like tiny snowdrifts. The radiator ticked back on. Somebody's fork rolled to the edge and teetered but didn't fall. I could smell Folgers perking again in the kitchen and orange oil where Kelsey had wiped the counter like she was erasing evidence. The manila envelope in my coat felt like a steady hand on my ribs. I had said we'd save it for dessert. It was dessert. Kelsey came in with a grin that showed every tooth. "All right," she sang, plopping onto the arm of Jason's chair as if she were both queen and audience showtime. Jason's jaw worked. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, at the tree, at the clock, anywhere a man looks when he hopes time will do his talking. I reached into my coat slow enough to keep my breath even and set the envelope on the coffee table beside the tidy little empty box they'd given me earlier. That hollow cube sat there like a bad idea you've already said out loud. The red ribbon around my envelope made a soft whisper when I slipped it free. I didn't pull out the whole stack, just the trust summary on top, bold title, facing up so even the cousins at the far end could read McAllister Family Trust, amended and restated, December 24th. Kelsey tried to laugh and couldn't quite find it. "What is this Walter A. scrapbook?" "Just paper," I said, "the same way you say just weather, plain English." Maddie had inched to the front of the couch without anyone noticing. She was holding a handmade card she'd been hiding under her leg, snowman stickers, a pencil drawing of a dock, my name printed blocky and brave. Kelsey touched her shoulder, a little push that meant later. "It's okay," I told Maddie. "I'm ready for good things right now." She slid the card to me across the table. The paper rasped. On the front she'd written, "For Grandpa True North." I tucked it under the envelope edge like ballast. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't raise my voice. I read 2 lines the way you read a recipe you already know by heart. Primary beneficiaries: Maddie and Eli via Pine River Bank Spendthrift Trust. I let my finger sit on the line so the words could land where they needed to. Then, any challenge triggers removal and reduction. Air changed shape in the room. The funny thing about words like that, boring banker words, is they can be sharp as fence wire. Jason's eyes flicked to me and away. One of the cousins set a fork down without meaning to, and it clicked against the plate and stayed there. Kelsey found her voice at last. "You can't." "I already did," I said, calm as a man checking a breaker. "It keeps things simple. The bank pays schools and doctors directly. Nobody has to run money through anybody else. We stay out of each other's pockets and each other's fights." "It's manipulative," she snapped, color climbing her neck. "It's stewardship," I said, "and clarity." Jason shifted, then sat forward. "Dad, why didn't you talk to us first?" I looked at him so he'd have to find my eyes. "Son, I've been talking for a year. You just weren't hearing. Paper helps people listen." No one moved. The TV hummed a carol to a room that had no use for it. I slid the summary across the table for them to see. The notary seal caught a bit of tree light and held it. I turned away from the adults, then because this wasn't about them. I reached into my pocket and palmed the old Lund Boats keychain until the metal warmed. I held it out to Maddie, then to Eli, so they both had a hand on it at once. The key was nicked and certain. "This is for Summers," I said, the words fitting my mouth like they'd been measured, not sales. Eli's face did a small firework. "We're going." "June," I said. "Bluegill and Grandma Linda's cornbread. You 2 and me. Phones in a bowl, hooks barbless till you can do it in your sleep." Maddie's fingers tightened around the key. "Grandma's batter," she whispered, and I saw Linda standing at the cabin stove, wooden spoon tapping the bowl steam, fogging the screen door where mosquitoes waited like rude guests. Kelsey's smile, what there was of it, froze mid-laugh. You could almost hear it set like chocolate that's been tempered wrong. She looked from the key to the paper and back like she'd missed a step and had no way to catch herself without falling. Jason rubbed his hands together as if he could warm them with friction alone. "Dad, the cabin needs a new roof." "The trust can handle taxes and insurance," I said. "I'll cover a roof if the wind gets pushy. It's a place to use, not a thing to strip for parts." Kelsey leaned in, voice low and hot. "So you went around your own son to a bank, to some lady lawyer, to a church?" "No," I said. "I went toward my grandchildren and the woman I loved, and toward a way of doing things that doesn't require yelling." She looked at the cousins like she wanted their help, and found none. The room wasn't with her anymore. It wasn't with me either, not exactly. It was with sense. That's the best you can hope for when people have been playing at smallness. I put the summary back in the envelope, tucked Maddie's card safe inside, retied the ribbon with hands that didn't shake. "Thank you for supper," I said to Kelsey, because manners are not bargaining chips. They're the price of staying human. Jason checked the snowblower cord in the morning. It's about to let go. "You're leaving?" Eli asked, alarmed. "In a minute," I said, and I meant it. There's a time to stand your ground and a time to walk your boundary. Kelsey tried once more, brittle. "So this is your big show papers at Christmas?" "This is me making it quiet," I said. "So we don't have to do this ugly later." Maddie shoved the key into her pocket like a secret that made her taller. She hugged me chin to my shoulder the way a girl does when she thinks she might cry and refuses to. Eli barreled into my waist. I smelled shampoo and wrapping paper and the peppermint on his breath. I pulled on my coat. The zipper's teeth found each other with the satisfaction of something built to last. At the door, I turned back to Jason. "You're a good man," I said, because it matters to say it out loud when someone's teetering on that belief. "Be a good husband, too." He nodded once, a quick, guilty nod. "Dad," he said, and his voice was a plea without words. "New Year's," I told him. "Come to the pancake breakfast. You'll see the rest." Kelsey barked a small laugh that had no humor in it. A church announcement. "That's your victory lap." "It's not a victory," I said. "It's a memory with legs." The storm door complained when I opened it. Cold slid in and made the tree lights look warmer. Out on the porch, the world had that muffled quiet you only get when snow has decided to own the night. My boots squeaked. The F-150 protested and then cooperated. I sat with my hands on the wheel till the defroster cleared a porthole through the frost. I didn't look back at the house. Some things work better when people have to look at each other and nod at you leaving. The envelope rode on the seat beside me with its ribbon neat and sure. Maddie's card pressed under the flap like a promise. At the corner of Alpine and Riverside, the light turned red and held me a long time. A train horn laid that flat Midwestern note over the dark. In the rear view, I could see my own face, the lines Linda used to trace with a finger when she wanted me calm. Not bitter, I told the glass. Just better. The light went green. I rolled forward into a night that felt simpler than it had that afternoon, and maybe that was just the engine settling into itself, or maybe finally I was too. New Year's morning came under a sky the color of a steel shovel. I parked by the fellowship hall at First Lutheran and let the cold make a little smoke of my breath. Inside, the air was syrup and coffee and wet wool. Rubber mats ate the sound of boots. A toddler in a paper crown bumped my knee and said, "Excuse me," like he'd practiced it all week. Hank waved me over. On the far table, a griddle hissed as two teenagers poured batter into careful circles. Pastor Ruth moved among folding chairs with a clipboard, and the calm Linda always liked, steady nurse-like, nobody made small. Near the podium, a framed photo of Linda in her blue cardigan sat on a cheap easel with 3 carnations in a vase. It was not much and exactly right. Dot from Denny's was here pouring Folgers. Steam fogged the glasses of every man in a Packers hat. We ate on paper plates that bent if you didn't respect them. The Coke machine thunked once and went quiet. Church basements everywhere make the same noises. Pastor tapped the mic. It fed back once and then minded. "Friends," she said before the raffle, "we have one more thing. This morning, we announced the Linda McAllister Nursing Scholarship." She set a hand on my shoulder and then on Linda's frame. Linda cared with both hands. We thought it right to help a few more hands learn. Forks paused. I could hear the sticky squeak of a syrup bottle 2 tables over. Pastor looked at me. I stood because men my age still stand when called. "Thank you," I said. "Linda was a CNA. She taught me care. You can feel fresh sheets. A warm washcloth, a sandwich cut the way the patient likes. We're funding a small scholarship in her name each year." And I touched my pocket where the letter of wishes rode like a folded map. "We've set some family things in order for the grandkids." A bank officer in a gray suit, Martin from Pine River, stood near the soundboard smoothing his tie. "If I may," he said, eyes asking permission. "Please," I said. He faced the room. "I'm with Pine River Bank and Trust. Mr. McAllister asked that I handle the practicals. Funds for the scholarship and for 2 minors' education and medical needs will be paid directly to schools and providers, no intermediaries." He didn't gloat. He let the words sit until they did their work. Rooms make a sound when sense arrives. Chairs ease. Someone at the back said, "Well, that's decent," which is Midwestern for exactly right. The doors opened and January blew in with Jason and Kelsey. Her hair looked as if winter had made a pact not to touch it. Jason's eyes found mine and skated away. They stopped by the coat tree late enough to be noticed early enough to claim they were trying. Pastor nodded to Martin. He went on gentler. "Mr. McAllister's letter of wishes says the family cabin is for use by grandchildren and should not be sold while a grandchild wants to use it. Taxes and insurance can be paid from trust funds. The bank will administer according to those instructions." He glanced my way. "Our job is to be boring and kind." The clap started at one table and rolled across the hall, warm, not loud. A few older women dabbed eyes. The teenagers at the griddle looked at Linda's photo like she'd handed them a spatula. Kelsey slid forward as if pulled by the weight of attention. "So that's it," she said, not quite whispering. "You let a bank raise your family?" I didn't answer. Pastor did. "We help each other become our better selves," she said. "Banks help with numbers. Churches help with names." Jason came close, voice low so the mic wouldn't catch it. "Dad, we should have talked." The words were clumsy and honest. I saw the boy who once dented the Buick and told me before I found it. "We're talking," I said. "Public helps us be clear." A woman in a robin's egg cardigan touched my sleeve. "I worked with Linda in home health," she said. "She always used first and middle names, said it made people feel whole." "It did," I said. Something in my chest unknotted. Martin finished with a small nod. "If questions come up, our office is open, but I hope they won't." He meant the paper was clear and we plan to keep it that way. Pastor lifted the frame so everyone could see Linda's face. "We remember what people teach us by what we do next," she said. "Thank you, Walt." She started the clap and the clap caught. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a retuning. The room found the key it used to live in before empty boxes and backsplash talk. Kids darted past with crowns askew. Someone shouted, "Number 143 quilt winner." Kelsey stood in the middle of that country soundscape, wanting another script. The looks she caught weren't mean, just level, the kind that say we won't play your game. Her smile flattened and folded. People queued to shake my hand. Some grips were firm, some were the two-handed kind, concerned and dear. "She sat by me every chili supper," one man said. "She corrected my bingo once someone else laughed. The stories stacked like pancakes, warm, a little sticky, and my balance came back between them." Jason waited until the line thinned. He stepped close enough that I could smell the cold on his coat. "Can I come by Wednesday?" he asked. "Soup's on at 5, I said. "Bring your listening ears." He nodded, small and grateful. Consequence without cruelty is still consequence. He was feeling it. I wanted him to. I didn't want it to break him. Hank brought my coat. The hall had the end-of-event sound chairs, folding tape, peeling off signs, broom shush. I looked at Linda's photo once more. "We did it clean," I told her in my head. "We kept your name whole." Outside, winter had brightened the way it does when it decides to forgive you a little. I watched Jason hold the door for two kids lugging a raffle basket. Kelsey followed quiet. The griddle hissed behind me, turning batter into breakfast for the next crew. I breathed steam and felt steadier than I had in a long while. The day after the pancake breakfast, my kitchen smelled like split pea soup and bay leaves. I set 2 bowls on the table and turned the AM radio low so the farm report sounded like weather. Snow tapped the window screen in a steady, civil way. The house had that good winter creak old bones, stretching, not complaining. Jason knocked like a man who wasn't sure he should. I opened the door to cold in his red ears. He took off his boots on the mat without me asking. It surprised me how much that mattered. "Soup," I said. "Thanks," he said, sitting where his mother used to shell peas. He wrapped both hands around the bowl like he was warming news he didn't know how to deliver. We ate a few spoons before he tried. "Dad," he said, and stopped. He shook his head like he was backing up a truck and needed a better angle. "I'm sorry about Christmas, about everything. I should have stopped it. I didn't." I sipped and let the heat soften my face. "Thank you," I said. "That means something." He exhaled. He looked older than I see him in my head. That's a shock no father expects the first time you notice your child has a middle-aged neck. He rubbed the spot where the coat collar had pressed. "Since Mom died," he said, "I've felt like the floor was tilted. Money I can control. Feelings, not so much." Kelsey pushes. I tell myself I'll fix it later. He gave a small laugh with no joke in it. Later keeps moving. "We all grab what's nearest when we're sliding," I said. "The trick is not grabbing someone else by the throat." He nodded like a man learning to agree out loud. "I'm not proud of the box, of letting her say what she said." "Boxes happen," I said. "What matters is what comes after." He stared at the soup, then set the spoon down careful, as if quiet could make truth easier. "I need to ask," he said. "The trust, is it reversible?" "No," I said, and the word felt like a plank that didn't bend. "The trust stands. Pine River runs it if I can't. Education and health go straight to the source. The cabin stays a cabin. That's not a punishment, it's a fence line." He blew out through his nose, okay? His eyes got wet but didn't spill. "Can I still come up to the lake with the kids if we act right?" "Act right," I said. "The lake welcomes the ones who respect it." He nodded, grateful in the small way men are when they're trying not to cry. "What do you need from me?" he asked. I had rehearsed this the way I'd practiced the lines on the trust summary. 3 things I said, holding up 3 fingers, because some words sit better when they can see where to land. 1, respect in my house and anywhere my name is said. That includes by your wife. 2, I will be present for the kids. I will not be a wallet or a last-minute sitter. Ask, don't assume. 3, if you have a problem with me, you bring it to me, not a cousin text chain, me. He sat with that. I can do that, he said. Then smaller, I want to do that. My phone lit up on the counter. Kelsey's name. A text preview. I'm sorry if I turned it face down. She's reaching out, I said. Should I? He began. You decide your house, I said. I'll answer later, cordial, not negotiating the terms. He laughed properly, then quick and surprised the way a cough becomes a chuckle. You and Mom, he said, boundaries and casseroles. Your mother believed in hot food and clear lines, I said. She didn't see a conflict. We finished the soup. He told me the snowblower cord finally snapped just like I said, and he'd replaced it. He asked if I still had my fish fillet knife with the broken tip. I told him I'd ground it back to honest steel. We stood at the door like neighbors who just started being family again. Wednesday nights might work, he said. It's when games aren't stacked. Soup's cheaper than court, I said. We both knew what I meant. After he left, I answered Kelsey's text. Thank you for the message. The trust stands. My door's open when we can speak with respect. W. She typed a bubble, then disappeared. Sometimes silence is progress. January plodded into February. I shoveled each storm like a man with something to prove to his heart. Church on Sundays, coffee in the fellowship hall where Linda's picture had tasted applause. Dot poured at Denny's on Thursdays. I tipped too much and called it a habit, not a sin. The bank sent a tidy letter that could put a man to sleep, accounts funded, deeds recorded, beneficiaries designated, no contest clause lodged like a barbed point if anyone got clever. March thawed, then lied. April made mud and hope. On a Tuesday in May, a cream-colored envelope showed up with a return address I didn't know. Inside, a thank you note from a nursing student named Clarissa, first Linda McAllister scholar. She said she'd learn hands the way Linda had. She drew a little stethoscope in the corner. I pinned it on the cabin's corkboard in my mind, and then when the season opened, on the real one by the door. June arrived like boat wake against a dock. The cabin smelled like cedar and last summer. The screen door still stuck at the top unless you lifted as you pulled. We carried in a cooler, a bag of cornmeal, a cast iron skillet, and 4 hearts that were ready. Maddie ran her hands over the counter like she was learning Braille for the past. It's smaller than I remembered, she said, smiling. Things are I said until they aren't. Eli went straight to the rod rack and picked the light spinning setup like he'd been born to it. Jason hauled in the old box fan and plugged it into the outlet that always sparks once and then behaves. He stood in the doorway and breathed like a man who'd been underwater and just found air. We took the Lund out in late light. The lake went milk glass and then pewter. Bobbers plopped, bluegill mouthed. Maddie squealed at the first tap and then, scolding herself, set the hook neat. Barbless, remember I said. Respect first, then dinner. Back at the dock, the fish flicked their tails like they were voting no. I showed Maddie how to follow the bone with the blade. She wrinkled her nose and did a better job than I had my second year married. Eli did a little victory dance and almost toppled off the bench. Inside, cornbread rose the way it only does when the cast iron has memory. Oil shimmered, fillets hissed. Jason wiped his hands on a towel and set plates quiet present. We ate too much and exactly enough. Corn cake crumbs made a map across the table. The radio fizzed in an old song Linda used to hum and nobody said don't sing. After dishes, we sat on the dock with feet cooling in water that made your ankles smart. Mosquitoes noticed us and then decided respect went both ways. Stars came on one at a time until the sky had enough to work with. Maddie leaned her head on my shoulder. Eli leaned on Jason. The weight was good. I thought about the empty box from December. It had held air and a dare. I thought about the ribboned envelope and the cabin key and how some gifts don't look like gifts until summer proves them. I touched Linda's locket and felt the small beat the lake always puts in a man's chest. Grandpa Maddie said, Thanks for not yelling. Thanks for paper. Paper doesn't raise its voice, I said. It just stands up straight. She squeezed my hand. Jason cleared his throat and didn't pretend it was a cough. He said, Thank you, Dad. The words traveled the short distance like a long journey does when it's finally done. So here's what I know talking to you now. Neighbor-to-neighbor respect isn't a ribbon you tie on a holiday. It's the way you carry a name in your mouth when nobody's clapping. You don't have to pick fights to set fences. You can love people and still lock the gate. If this felt true to you, if it loosened a knot or lit a little porch light, share it with someone who needs permission to be kind and firm at the same time. And if you want more stories about ordinary folks trying to do the next right thing, you know where to find me. Pull up a chair, bring your listening ears. We'll keep the coffee hot.